Really quickly.
Yeah.
And I just... Good afternoon and welcome to the Wall-to-Wall Jazz Festival here in Abergavenny. And you've just finished watching Ian Shaw and Barry Green in the main theatre. And this is an opportunity for us to be in conversation. And I was asked to chair one of these slots. My name is Debs Hancock. I'm a local jazz vocalist. And I was asked to chair one of these slots in conversation. And I could choose anybody that I wanted to speak to. It didn't take me very long to decide who I wanted to talk to today and to spend some quality time talking about their jazz experiences. And that is double bass player Erika Lyons. Erika plays double bass for me on a regular basis. And we travel in the car together. Between gigs, we sit and have a drink in breaks. And it's just fascinating. A little nugget about something will come out and I'll think, oh, Erika, that's interesting. I'd really like to talk to you about that at some point. So, Erika Lyons, a lifetime in jazz.
It is a bit of a lifetime, actually, now you come to speak of it.
Yes. We're going to talk specifically about an event that happened when you were a very young player. And we've got a film clip that we're going to share with you before we move on. It's a film clip of you as in a masterclass that was performed on the BBC with Ray Brown, Ella Fitzgerald's husband. You were one of the students that was selected. We're going to look at that video right now.
I want those notes to ring out. Now try it again for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take your time. Use all of the bass. Come on the way up. Come on up here somewhere. I want to make. That's it. Now, I told you about coming home back home now. All right. When you finish your blues, make sure it's finished. Don't leave me up in the air when you finish the song.
I find it very difficult to kind of come round and it's just the last couple of bars. I find it difficult.
Okay. So you were playing in the key of F, right?
Mm.
So your last 4 bars would be G, right? C, F, or, so if you say last 4 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ray Brown. And what a lovely, friendly and engaging man he appeared to be in that video. Would that be a fair analysis, just watching that?
He was lovely, but he was also quite harsh, and I was lucky because he was very harsh to the other people performing, who were Andy and Tim.
Right.
And yes, 3 of us were on like a summer school, and Ron Mathewson was one of the bass teachers on that, and so that's how he recommended us to be on the programme. He was phoned up by the BBC and asked to recommend 3 bass players.
So 3 bass players in
Yes.
all of the UK having an opportunity to perform with one of the world's most heralded performers, and they chose you. I mean, that is just phenomenal. So this is as a result of being on the summer school, or had you met your teacher before?
No, it was a result of being on the summer school.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, it was just a wonderful opportunity. And the things that I was really lucky, because I think in that clip he was talking about, you know, needing to come home and finding your way with the line and what you do, your bass line, and finding the way to actually come home and give the support that you need to the rest of the band, which is crucial to what the function of the bass player is. But for the others, he sort of took them to task very much on their sound, because like using the amp to provide the sound, whereas if you listen to any recordings with Ray on them, his sound is so and beautiful that it really supports, just in that sort of acoustic way, that the sound of his bass supports the whole of what's happening in the music. Yeah. So he used the sound of the instrument, and also the other player was sort of quite into playing much more free music that Ray wasn't so into playing, and
so they didn't have such a positive experience then?
No.
I mean, would you say that what you learned from that experience was life-changing? Did it bed in you a sort of structure to your performance that made a difference for you?
Not life-changing, but part of things, because, you know, I was so lucky in the situation that I was in. I was able to go and listen to great players like every night of the week, and I get on my bike and I cycle to Ronnie Scott's and go. I remember going 5 weeks on the trot listening to Woody Shaw and then Cedar Walton, and I was able to absorb so much music just by listening, and watching is so important.
Oh, well, it sounded it's absolutely wonderful. Were you nervous? I mean, you know, live TV, here we are now in the modern day on the internet. But the BBC was a really big deal back then. I mean, being invited with one of those stars to be filmed on the television, how were you feeling about that?
To tell you the truth, I overslept.
I love you. I love you. I knew that you would say that. That is
And
so
I sort of woke up and thought, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Rushed there, literally just got there in time.
Oh,
and I didn't have a minute to think about anything.
So you just bundled in. Was it your double bass, obviously?
Yes, I bundled in, and luckily I knew Martin and Brian Lemon pretty well, and they were really sweet and very supportive. And I got there in time, but I didn't have any time to panic.
And you were on first. I mean,
Yes.
that was quite something. So were you on the bus with your double bass? Or?
No, I got it in my car.
Oh, right, that's lucky. So you just arrived, you hadn't even breathed a sigh of relief and you were on live air.
Yes.
Maybe that wasn't such a bad thing, you know.
Sometimes it's good just
You
to...
looked relaxed, I think,
Yes.
and you looked engaged, and you definitely struck me that you were tuned in to what he had to say.
Well, you know, he's an amazing player. He has a lot to say, a lot to teach, and you just need to be like a sponge.
Yeah.
And absorb whatever anyone really has to show you.
Yeah, so was this masterclass a series with various people, or was this a one-off? Or
It was a series of 4. They wanted to compare jazz and classical.
Right.
So they did Ray Brown as a jazz bass player and Gary Carr as a classical.
Right.
And then they did 2 clarinets, and I can't remember who the soloists, the masterclass people were for that. But Gary Carr was wonderful too. And I remember him talking about playing the bass, and he's talking about chocolate cake and about how you get this really beautiful, wonderful, physical, delicious sensation of playing the bass like chocolate cake.
well, yes, and why not? Because it's rich and deep,
Exactly.
and ornament and sensual and everything, and all that
Yes.
goes with chocolate cake. So I think we can associate with that quite well, actually. So you didn't feel intimidated because you didn't have the chance.
No.
You were just rabbit in the glare, or just...
I'm a bit stupid.
No, I can assure you you're
And
not.
so it just, I just sort of got there. Oh yeah, I'm meant to be doing this. Okay, yeah, oh right, we're on. Okay, right, do it, and try and think of something there and then.
So you mentioned that you were at a summer school.
Yes.
So was that a regular thing for you, going to summer schools, or...
I did for a few years. That was the Barry Summer School, and that was, pretty much in its heyday when there were fantastic British musicians there. It was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
and the opportunity in those summer school situations where you'd meet other people that were really lovely to work with at peers, but also then they'd have the jazz club in the evening, and you got to mix up and play with things.
An experiment, I guess.
Exactly. And Tony Oxley, I remember playing with him, and he was just amazing because the way he played, it was sort of like a surge of waves, and he's phenomenal drumming, and it was just a really lovely experience. And he said I was a young Charlie Mingus. So I think he
said that you were a young Charlie Mingus.
Yes.
You see, you've been talent spotted over and over in your career. We'll come on to that in a moment. So you were living in London at this time, by the sound of it, then?
Yes, I was living in London.
And
I
so...
I decided that I wanted to play the bass, and I started going to summer schools and advertising in the Melody Maker if anyone wanted a bass player, which was hilarious because they'd phone up and say, well, are you a girl? And I say yes. They say, oh, we don't want a girl. But this was more for sort of other bands. I was happy to play any kind of thing. And I ended up playing in a country and western band, which was hilarious for about 6 months till they kicked me out because I wouldn't sing.
Right. So what sort, you were basically at that time recording with anybody, or was that predating your recording times?
That was all. I was really just learning, just teaching myself how to play the bass.
Yeah, that's fabulous. So would you say that Ray Brown, well, in fact, you've told me a story about Ray Brown. Let's remind myself.
Right.
Because we did an Ella at 100 concert, didn't we, together? And we played that game where we were in the audience. Well, we weren't. We were on the stage, but the audience were there. And we were trying to work out how many people had they seen Ella live, had they been to a concert, had they, what were the links? Do you remember?
Yes.
And I said that, what's that psychology philosophy that everyone in the world is 5-6 people away from everyone else? And we sat and we worked out that I am in the same band as you, and that you played bass and had became quite friendly thereafter with Ray Brown, and Ray Brown, of course, was Ella Fitzgerald's husband. So that was really quite a powerful moment in that room, because it was her birthday and we were really celebrating.
Yes, that was
weren't we?
nice,
We had
that,
cake
yeah.
and we sang her happy birthday.
Yes.
And the fact that you had that such a close link, people were really touched by it, I think. You have a story to tell about Ray Brown. It reminds me of your amp or something.
Oh yeah, and much later on at the Cheltenham Festival, he needed to borrow an amp and he only wanted a polytone, and he borrowed my amp. But that's not a very exciting story, really.
Well, not many people get to lend Ray Brown an amp that without, quite frankly, he couldn't be Ray Brown. So I think we'll accept that as a story. But I really, really appreciate you talking to me about your experience with Ray. I mean, out of all the bass players in all of the country, Erika, Lyons, they chose you. And that is quite something, really quite something. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
We're going to look at a video now, and it's about where we are. The Wall to Wall Jazz Festival is happening here in Abergavenny, the gateway to the Brecon Beacons. And so we've got a little clip to share where we are. And, you know, next year maybe you'd like to come and join us. That was fantastic.
Is that right?
What was that like? It was really interesting. I'm going to put us... As you can see, what a beautiful place and what a lovely part of the world. We're here in Monmouthshire in South Wales, just the other side of the Severn Bridge. And actually this weekend the sun is shining and it could not be nicer. So why not call in and have a visit? So in 1978, you were living in London. You had masterclass with Ray Brown. You were going out every night to every jazz club in the town, and you had a calling. You were saying, right, jazz is for me. This is what I'm going to do with myself. I want to be with the best. Would that be fair?
I don't know if I'm that really good at thinking about intelligent things, Debs.
But subconsciously, you were being pulled.
I just knew I loved playing and that I needed to get to New York because it's so different. Well, I had that intimation that it'd be really different, and I needed to study some more. And I really needed, I just wanted that whole American kind of thing, really.
Yeah. So did you just go by yourself? Did you know anybody?
No, I saved up. I saved up to go for 3 months, and I fixed up to have lessons because to get the visa to get into America, I had to show that turning up with my bass, I was going there for a proper reason.
Yeah.
And so I had a letter from Rufus Reid and Buster Williams and Hal Galper saying that I was going there for lessons for 3 months. And it was all a bit of a disaster because a friend of a friend said that I could stay in her place in Brooklyn, and I don't think she was very good at telling the truth, and actually I don't know if she even had a place in Brooklyn. But anyway, literally I was getting on the plane and I didn't have anywhere to go when I got the other end with my bass.
And how old were you when this was happening? Or am I allowed? I can say how old you can tell us. How old were you?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Something 23, something like that. 23 probably.
Okay.
Anyway, so luckily at the last minute, my brother-in-law had worked with someone in America, in New York, and he said that I could put his address down as a place to go.
Right.
So I turned up, and my plane was really delayed, of course, so I turned up like sort of 4 in the morning with my bass in a 7-foot hard flight case, my little suitcase, and just had this place to go to. And I couldn't stay there because it was a tiny loft and he was living there with his wife, but it was an address I could go to. So I bundled in the taxi with my stuff, arrived at his apartment, and luckily through a piano player, Errol Clark, who I'd worked with in London, who used to live in, who was American, he knew and gave me the address of Jeff Hitman, his friend, who had a loft down in Chambers Street, which is right where the World Trade Centre used to be.
Right, of course.
And he had like a huge loft and these funny little cubicles. And I had a cubicle in his huge loft.
So you were in a warren in the loft, basically.
Yes.
But you had a bed.
I had a bed.
A roof over your head.
Yes.
You were not an illegal alien.
No.
That had gone AWOL around New York.
Not yet, no.
No, so not yet, no. So how long were you there in the end? You went for 3 months. How long did you stay?
Nearly 2 years, which was great, you know, and it was the experience of a lifetime, really, because Errol Clark, the piano player, he came over then for some holiday to visit his family, and he got a gig at this amazing sort of piano bar on Bleecker Street called the Surf Maid, and he asked me to play bass with him, and so we'd do like an hour set of a piano and bass duo.
So this is the Surf Maid on Bleecker Street.
On Bleecker Street,
right.
Sort of pretty much opposite the village gate,
Yeah.
which, you know, and everything was happening there. It was just wonderful. And then there'd be another piano player, Claude, who'd play for everyone who wanted to do a sing-along. And they had a piano with a great big sort of case on it that everyone could sit round and put their drinks on. But the piano was only probably about that big. And we alternated sets, so we did like an hour. Claude did an hour, we did an hour, he did an hour, we did another hour. So in the breaks, it was just wonderful because we could just go around and listen, catch music here, there and everywhere, and all the piano bars. And
amazing.
It was so wonderful just to hear that much music. And because it was every Friday, Saturday and Sunday lunchtime, we could just go and people knew us. And so there's a fantastic place called the Jazz Forum that was like a 10-minute walk, and we'd just go and walk there and catch a bit of a set. So we didn't have to pay, they knew us, and we'd catch somebody playing, and it was just listening to music and playing music non-stop, which was glorious.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds to me that the connections that you made in London meant that you hit the ground running in New York. People already knew who you were.
Absolutely.
And that you were already respected and taken in. And what an opportunity that this friend of yours, you said his name for me,
Errol Clark. He was a really, really lovely, sweet guy and wonderful piano player.
Yeah, and so because he already was from America and they knew him,
yes,
and he took you in there with him, all of a sudden you're in there.
Yes.
You're part of that fantastic focal group of people that are playing jazz in New York at that time. I cannot imagine how exciting that must have been.
It was just brilliant, yeah.
So what did you do? I mean, basically you were hanging out at the bars, you were there all the time. Were you actually getting paid, and could you afford to live in your little warren at the time?
No, well, that's the thing. I was getting paid, and so I'd saved up enough for 3 months, and I ended up being able to stay there nearly 2 years because I was earning money illegally.
Yeah,
we shouldn't say
we won't
that.
say that. Delete.
But then Errol had to come back to England because that's where he was living, and so then I started working there with another piano player, and it was just wonderful. So I'd get up, practice, have a lesson maybe, go to a jam session, go and do a rehearsal, often go and do some busking when the weather was good enough. And you're busking, and then, Chet Baker walks by, or George Grossman or something like that. It's just extraordinary. And because of the way that Manhattan is organised, you can get on the subway and you're a couple of streets along from where you're going to set up, and the drummer has his trap case with a snare drum and his cymbal in. He uses a trap case as a bass drum. And, I could walk everywhere with the bass on my back and my amp on a little trolley. And
just plug in somewhere and away to go.
yes, exactly.
Now, I went to New York at about the same time, and I remember it quite clearly that it wasn't the safest place to go. I mean, it's a much different place today than it was back in the 1980s. You know, you didn't want to go on the subway, actually, and you certainly didn't want to walk down certain streets or be anywhere near Central Park on your own at night. So there you are, a woman in New York, presumably walking around at the crack of dawn, having been up all night at what some may consider seedy jazz bar in the middle of wherever. You were putting yourself in some sense of danger. Did you feel that at the time?
Nobody bothered me too much when I had my bass on my back, my amp carried along in the trolley. They thought, no, we're not going to mess with her most of the time. And Joanne Brackeen, who was Stan Getz' piano player, and she said the best thing to do is act like you're mad if anyone bothers you, because people don't like interacting with mad people. The only time I did have some problem was I was walking back, and I didn't have my bass. I was walking back to my apartment. It was on 4th Street and Broadway, and I saw someone on the other side of the road, and I said, this person's got a red shirt on. People in red shirts don't actually hurt you. And I walked on, and he walked on, and he walked past my apartment. I thought, that's fine, I go in. And I walked in, I didn't bother to shut the door properly behind me. And the next minute I turned around and he's there with a knife. And I just screamed and screamed and screamed, and he ran away. But that was lucky, you know, and I should have... And that was a big lesson that I need to trust my instincts a bit more, really.
And Streetwise is for every age, regardless of where you are, I think, isn't it? Just being aware of what's around you.
Yes.
But, a story. It says here that this time in New York, for you, was the time that you felt more than any other in your life like a real jazz musician.
Yes. That's true, because I get up and I just do music until I went to bed. And I'd be walking around with my bass on my back because of the geography of the place. You know, you can put the bass on your back and walk from one place to another. You've got to get in a car in London. Or Monmouthshire.
Yeah, well, certainly. I've been to Erika's house, and it's deepest, darkest countryside, isn't it?
But you know, where you can walk and just carry your instrument with you, you meet all the people that are playing, and you say hello, and you pick up gigs, you know, in the time before mobile phones and the rest
emails
of it.
And the rest of technology that we're taking advantage of here today, of course, absolutely. So, New York, what was the highlight? What do you think out of that experience that you had really stands out as the glory moment of those years, would you say?
Gosh, the thing that I loved learning was from Rufus Reid, who's a wonderful bass player, and he taught me, he said, whatever you're doing in the music, make sure you use dynamics to give it a shape. So if you're playing your line and it's like 8 bars long through a part of the sequence, don't just go mwah, just make it have a proper shape and like contours. And that was the most beautiful, valuable thing to have learned, really, that you sort of creating these wonderful shapes through dynamics and intensity all the time in the music. And it just brings it alive, really. And you start doing that, and other people, even if they're playing very wah, they suddenly start listening and responding, and it becomes a really beautiful, graceful, sort of shapely kind of music, really. I think that's a way to describe it.
Well, and that's what it's about, isn't it, really? I mean, for me, and I know that you're definitely somebody that fits into this category, a quality inspirational player is somebody who plays with their entirety. It's not going through the motions, just following the notes. It is very much about putting your whole soul, your feelings, your emotions into what you're playing. And that's sort of describing what you're saying, I think, isn't it?
Well, you've got all that interaction happening there, but
Yeah.
really, I really believe you have to play from your feet. And like
Play from your feet.
My feet, and
Talk
like my
to me
bass.
about your feet, Erika.
Well, I used to sit down, and actually I prefer to stand up, and I like to be able to move and sort of dance a bit and be really properly earthed. And like my bass, I think, is a huge lightning conductor.
Yeah.
It's going into the ground, and you've got like the earth coming up then wonderfully with the, you know, supporting everything, and I think that is really, really important.
So in a sense, that planting of yourself into the ground with your bass as that extra leg and how you're leaning it into your body, is absolutely part of you when you're performing.
It's all really physical, and you know, playing the 2-hour gig on the piano is meant to be the same as moving 4 tons of coal.
Because you're not just using your fingers.
No, the energy and the effort that needs to go into playing, you know, in a really physical, passionate way, takes that much energy.
And I think that, you know, as a member of the trio, definitely, Erika, you can feel that when hearing you perform. We've got a clip of you that you performed with Chris Hodgkinson. It's an MP3, it's not a video, but you're playing double bass on here, and I know it's you. I know it's you. It's just wonderful. Just listen to the bass underneath Chris and the rest of the band. It's wonderful. We're not listening to the bass. It's not happening. So don't worry about that. So we'll maybe we could look at what's happening next in the meantime, and after we've had our conversation together with Erika and all about her life in New York, we can look at what's coming into the main stage afterwards. We've got Gilad and his team. No?
We just carry on.
Oh,
for a
we
bit.
just carry on talking. Ah, there he is. So that's coming up next. Okay, don't go away because it will be live streamed. But we're going to carry on talking to Erika now about being a woman in jazz. They'll hear. Oh, do they think it's the end?
No, that's on now, so you've got a little break too.
We can carry on talking
But
now,
we
though.
could, yeah, but they're going.
There we go.
Voilà, brilliant. So we're going to come back and talk about you being a woman in jazz. Now, I've met and spoken and researched a little bit about this. And one thing that struck me, Erika Lyons, is that you have respect. I've been on a few summer schools, and when you're at summer schools, you do meet some incredible performers, world famous. I mean, I was at a course 2 years ago, I think, and Stan Saltzman was one of the tutors on the course.
He's so lovely.
Well, that's what he said about you. There we are. As he said, he'd started to talk and he asked me who played in my band, and I said Erika Lyons, and he said, "Oh, Erika Lyons, tell her hello from me."
Oh, that's very lovely.
He said, "Tell her hello from me," and what a phenomenal bass player she is. And Erika, and also I looked up online, I put you in, and there was a story in there, and it said, "I recently had the pleasure of hearing my old friend, the bassist Erika Lyons at Stratford Jazz with the Peter Cantor Quartet. Erika and I go back a long way. In fact, so many years, she lent me her spare double bass for many months, and so got me started on the whole contrabass journey. Our paths don't often cross these days, so it was a chance not to be missed." Who was that then, Erika?
That was lovely Adrian Litvinoff, who's a real lovely man, and he was on that summer school, that the first one in 1976 that I was on before I'd done the Ray Brown thing, and he runs like a jazz, lots of jazz in Leamington Spa now, so, and I think his band's called something like Shambhala, but maybe not Shambhala, I can't quite remember.
Okay.
But he's really lovely.
Lovely.
Yes.
And in fact, I looked up Ian Mann, and he says, it was a review that he did of something we did together. "A word here too for Lyons, whose expert double playing has graced the jazz scene in the Welsh borders for many years. She has backed a whole raft of London-based soloists on their visits to the border as part of a series of rural tours, working with the cream of local jazz talent, including trumpeter Ben Thomas. She's recently appeared on an album, Back in Your Own Backyard, recently released by trumpeter Chris Hodkins. We're going to play a little bit of that now. So tell us about this CD that you made with Chris Hodkins, son.
Well, it's really, because sometimes, you know, it's just, he used to run jazz services, and he's a nice trumpet player, cornet player, and yeah, he's very industrious, and he just wanted to do a recording. He sometimes comes down and we do gigs with him.
So it's somebody that you would have worked with many times. So let's hold on to that video maybe. We'll look at it later. You say being a woman in jazz has always been a struggle and still is. It's a man's world really, isn't it? Particularly back in the 70s and 80s, I think.
Yeah, you know, it's a really complicated issue, and it's very easy to sort of stereotype what it's like being a woman versus being a man. And, you know, there's issues in any job being a woman still, isn't there, in that?
Absolutely.
You know, it's not clear cut. But I think some of the part of the thing is that for jazz musicians, you're always very vulnerable. You're not ever really going to be very rich. Dear old John Gibbon always thanks whoever's put us on for teaching us that money doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean everything. And, you know, you've got quite a precarious lifestyle. You never know what's going to happen next. And I think, you know, when things are vulnerable, then it's easy to sort of marginalise certain parts of the population and everything. There's always been women in jazz, fantastic women piano players and saxophone players and drummers, everything really. And when I started playing, there was Jill Lyons, but you know, and there's been a tradition of women playing, but because it is such a passionate, exhausting kind of music, you just need to have a lot of stamina. And women have a lot of stamina, but you just have to not make any bones about it and just get on with it and play fast and play. Keep the energy. You've got to match the energy of whatever is needed. And very often you have to haul along a duff old drummer who's not keeping the time going. Giving you grey hairs because they're sort of lagging behind everything, and you need to kick them in the backside. But you've got to, you know, it's about where the time is, and you've just got to put everything into it and work hard. And in the 70s, 80s, you know, 70s, you know, it was really useful to be able to drive. Not everybody could drive then still, which is a weird thought now. Everybody can
absolutely.
drive.
But well, except in London, often you don't want to take your car anymore these days unless you have to. Parking is often an issue around Soho and beyond. But so really, the hard work that you put in the 70s in London and in the 80s in New York meant that you had the respect for the invitation in. Is that fair?
I never think of it like that because I just go, oh, all right, I'll go and do a gig. Okay, yeah, that's very nice. I'll go and do that. Thank you, sort of thing. So
well, that's true, but I think if you look back to that era, there was such a powerful mix of personalities in the jazz world at that time. It was all happening, really, wasn't it? Which is what you've alluded to with your time in New York. That being a regular bass player with those particular players at that particular time, when I would imagine it would be very macho, very alpha male, very gladiatorial in terms of, I'm sure that still happens now, that gladiatorial sort of outmaneuvering of each other in improvisation. To be a woman in the middle of that is quite something.
Well, except that people are basically very nice. 95% of the men are very nice, you know, and you're talking through the music and you're talking off the stand, and if you're just sort of interested in people. And that's the thing why it's complicated, because actually I really love working with the men, that it's very straightforward sort of relationship, and you have to be right there. You can't muck around. No. You've got to be doing your job or go home, and it doesn't matter. And the same applies to men as well. If you don't do your job, you don't get booked.
Get invited back. And I think that, Erika, is why everybody wanted you and was welcoming to you because you'd done your homework, the groundwork was there, and they knew that you would deliver and that something interesting would happen and that something creative and innovative would happen, and they trusted you with the music that they were making. And that is why, you know, we're talking today in that sense. Okay, so
I was very lucky too, you know, Debs, because I had so many opportunities to enjoy the music. And I haven't told you about the 606. Have we got time to talk about the 606?
We have got time to talk about the 606, yes,
because
of course.
The 606, dear Steve Ruby used to run this funny club down Kings Road, 606. It was a few doors on from Christopher Wray's light shop, and you used to be able to go there after hours with your own booze, and whoever turned up would turn up, and he used to cook some sort of nice
chili
food.
or something.
That's it, yeah. And there used to be some very random characters there for a bit. And then he decided that because things were going okay, that he'd put in a resident trio for people to come and sit in with a couple of nights a week. So this was such a privilege to be working with Nick Weldon and Mark Taylor at that time, or Clark Tracy did quite a lot of them as well. And so we did Wednesday and Saturday night, and after, you know, it would start late, so you do an ordinary gig and then you go and work there, and it was just wonderful because people would come along, and it was such a privilege and such an opportunity to work with people.
And what age were this? Was this like a clique this were the group of the moment? Because these names are just stunning that you're just mentioning as if, you know, having a cup of tea or something. I mean, anybody listening to you talking, they're just drooling, I think, to have wanted to be there, you know, at that time in the 606 Club at 4 o'clock in the morning. How did you get home, by the way?
I had my car. That's the thing, you've got to drive,
yeah,
and you've got to know how to fix your car because you can't afford to take it to a garage.
No.
So it's really good to have a hammer and be able to bash it
yeah,
to make it work.
Yeah, that's true enough. That's true enough. So that was happening in London, and all of those performers. What age do you think? Were you all a similar age, or was the age range a cross section? The people that were coming into that scene in the 606 Club at that time, were you all college aged or young or mixture?
No, working with Nick and Mark, we were sort of like a regular trio and working, you know, as a regular rhythm section. But, you know, Don Weller would come along, all sorts of people would come along of different ages and sit in and play, and it was an amazing time just to play music, really.
Yeah. Oh, that just sounds absolutely amazing. I mean, would that be a heyday for you? What would, out of everything that you've told me so far, is there anything that stands out more than anything else?
What, in my whole life of playing?
Yes. I mean, New York, you've already stated, was pretty special.
I think New York was really special because being able to go, it's just like playing and then going and listening to more music on the break. But 606 really came pretty close to it, and it was just lovely.
Yeah. So I've got one other thing to say. You know, often when people are talking about musicians, oh, he's played at Ronnie Scott's. And that's almost like a badge of honour, isn't it? To have performed in the UK at the Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club is having arrived here in the UK, I think. But you were in Ronnie Scott's quartet, Erika Lyons. You didn't just play at Ronnie Scott's Club on a one wet Thursday afternoon in November. You are actually part of the Ronnie Scott's quartet. Am I right, or have I missed something?
I wasn't part of the quartet or anything, but I depped sometimes.
Right, so you did. And how often would you have done that then?
Not that many times, but Ronnie, you know, I think people don't necessarily respect his playing enough because he did like all a bit loud and bish bash on the drums and things.
Are you allowed to say that? He's revered in this country. Hang on, should we edit that out?
But actually his time fill was fantastic. He really, really wonderful where he put his time, and it was lovely to work behind him. I did enjoy that.
So he was part of this group of people as well. Would he have come along to the 606 Club as well, or he already had his own club?
He had his own club. He didn't need to go to
the
606.
No, that competition would not have happened. Yes. Okay, that's lovely. Okay, finally then, reinventing yourself.
Right.
Erika Lyons is still improvising. That's never going to go anywhere, is it? But you've redirected it into a new lease of life, haven't you?
Yes.
You have indeed. And there's a website, Erika Lyons. What's your website?
Musictherapy.com.
Erika Lyons, musictherapy.com. Tell us about that.
Well, I thought, I'll be right.
Yeah.
I'm getting a bit old and I might not be clomping my bass around for another 20 years. What can I do? And my children had all left home, sort of thing. So I thought, well, they were about to leave home, so I needed to do something. And I've often been interested in music therapy for quite a while. And so I went and did the course at UWE. And it's been...
Which is the Bath University of...
No, Bristol.
That's Bristol,
Yes,
is it?
that's
Okay.
it, yeah.
Bristol University
That's
of...
it. University of the West of England.
Oh, thank you.
That's it. And I'm really glad I did that course. It was like a 3-year part-time master's to be a music therapist. You have to do a master's now. And I'm so lucky to have come back through the tradition of improvising that is really what part of, so the, you know, a huge part of what music therapy is about. And it's just giving people the invitation to play exactly how they want anyhow. They don't have to, you know, you can never have picked up an instrument, it doesn't matter. And you just give them invitation to play, and you just join them in the music, and it's so transformative in so many ways.
Well, I don't know how long you've been doing this. It's not very long. Is it a year or two?
2 years
2
since
years.
I qualified.
But you know, even straight away, Erika, right into the thick of it. I mean, you are working with refugees from war-torn Syria, is it?
No.
Where have they come from, your refugees that you've been working with?
I'm really sorry, Debs, I'm not working with refugees.
Ah, did I misunderstand? We'd had a conversation.
Maybe I said that you could work with refugees,
okay.
possibly. I'm sorry.
Are you working with individuals then?
No, families mostly.
Okay, I do apologise.
Families and who with children that have been adopted.
Right.
And who have suffered a lot of trauma within their birth family and have needed to be adopted, and they obviously have a lot of issues. I work in schools sometimes with children that have been adopted or have suffered abuse within their birth family, and it's really wonderful to be able to just help them with the music. And it's about improvising and allowing people to just respond in a musical way, because that's how we're really hardwired.
Yeah, well, yeah. So
Right from when we're 16 weeks old in the uterus, we can hear and we respond to a sound, and we'll turn our head to listen to a sound. It's pretty gloomy in the womb. There's not a lot going on to look at.
No, indeed.
There's not a lot of...
So the rhythm of life is sort of constantly around you in the womb in that sense.
Well, you're hearing the blood going... and you're hearing the heart going, the breathing go... And all these things are setting up rhythms, and you've got your guts gurgling, and you're hearing sound from outside because it does travel through, and you hear your mum's voice and family voice.
Exactly.
You hear all these things going, and it's our first port of call for our point of relationship with ourselves and the world.
So and exploring that, and how open are people once they come into Erika's musical therapy room? How open are people to allowing themselves that expressive freedom?
It's incredible. They come and look frightened, and you just offer them, they can play an instrument, choose an instrument, anything, a little bit of percussion.
Yeah.
And once they pick it up, suddenly that curiosity happens, and you know, it depends what the problem is, the difficulty is, that there might be, you know, really uncomfortable to feel you be with them in the music. They might need to do it on their own, and children are very forthright, and they'll often say, don't you play, just you listen, don't you even move if I start sort of moving. But to be witnessed doing something can be really, really powerful for them.
Yeah, and how many sessions would they come to you for something like that?
It's ongoing work with the families at over a period of years, really. This particular model is intensive model, once a month for at least a couple of years, really.
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
like that. Yeah.
And do you notice the difference yourself? Can you see the fruits of your inspiration, that is Erika Lyons?
No, it's not the inspiration, it's just being with them in the music, and things shift. Or they might suddenly start sharing things that have been really painful from their past, and finding a way through the music, often through song, through making up songs. that they can, or playing out games using the instruments of things that have really ruined their early life, and now they're able to address these issues and start moving on into being different people, which is wonderful.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Coming back to improvisation, and it's about letting yourself go, isn't it? It's about letting yourself go in your situation with your clients, in your new life. It's about letting yourself go with your instrument when you're performing. So Erika Lyons, double bass player to the stars. What nugget of advice would you share with any bass player that is watching us now? Because you have had advice from some of the world's top performers in masterclasses and lessons over the years, and just in performing. What's your advice?
On a summer school with Pete King, he said, everybody, doesn't matter whether you're a bass player or whatever, your job is to make everybody else in the band sound good. And that's true for everybody. It's not an ego trip, it's about the collective making everyone sound good.
And I think on that note, what a wonderful way to end. I think we're going to go to Erika and Ray. Let's put the long clip on. Erika, thank you for sharing your life story with me. It's been an inspiration, as always. I look forward to performing with you again soon. And don't go away, because Gilad will be with his band. They're setting up shortly in the theatre, and we look forward to going to watch that very soon. Thank you very much, Erika Lyons.
Thank you.
Thank you.